Welcome to the Jaimini Upadeśa Sūtras course on YouTube by Beyond the Stars Astrology. I am Joachim, your host. And in this course, I want to maybe briefly mention that when it comes to Vedic astrology, it is not easy to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. Mostly because throughout the Middle Ages, many of the astrological works have been rewritten, recompiled, corrupted. Things were added, also taken away, and also lost. So, for example, we see that even in the work of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is no mention of the precession of the equinoxes. So the knowledge was kind of lost, at least for 1,000 years. Also, Varahamihira, one of the greatest astrologers of his time, which was actually considered to be an incarnation of the sun god, he had no clue why the nakshatra of the spring equinox was now different in his time than compared to the books which were written before his time, for example, Surya Siddhanta, etc. So he had no clue about this. So this knowledge, at least for 1,000 years, was lost. And that's where it becomes a little bit interesting also, but not easy to put all of these pieces together. Also, Bṛhat Parāśara Horā Śāstra, which is actually the Parāśara Muni being the forefather of Vedic astrology. This book is also recompiled in the 18th century by a scholar who was traveling around India to try to put the pieces together. And so we have different techniques, but all of these techniques kind of come from an ancient science of astrology, which was actually one science, but it has been divided and spread out throughout different time chapters. So we have, of course, we have Shatbala, we have the Lajitari Avashtas, the Avashtas calculations, we have planetary aspects in Parāśara Horā Śāstra. But when it comes to Jaimini, sage Jaimini being actually a son and disciple of Parāśara, he speaks especially about those Rashi aspects. Even Parāśara Horā Śāstra, which was recompiled, in the first chapter already mentions those Rashi aspects, which originated actually from Jaimini, before even diving into the planetary aspects. And then we also have a Tajika system, an old Persian system, which is preserved in northern parts of India, and which actually is the Greek astrology and Western astrology based on. And they have special calculations, also planetary, for planetary aspects. And that's where many Western astrologers go wrong, because when they calculate squares and trines and sextiles, they forget about these calculations. And when they open up the chart, they just see trines and squares, and they think there is a trine and a square, which is actually has no strength behind it. So these trines and squares need to be at certain exact degrees, and sometimes these degrees can differ also. So that is kind of the difficulty when it comes to Vedic astrology, is trying to put all of these pieces together. Now, in the next videos, we will be focusing on Jaimini's astrology, because it is very simple. The techniques are very simple, and even children, once you have translated and understand the sutras, they can practice this, and you can come up with amazing results. So the difference between Parāśara Horā Śāstra, which is more based on individual astrology because of these planetary aspects and the dignities, the strengths, the Shatbala, the conditions, dealing with the habits of the individual and the character of the individual. Jaimini is Rashi based. And so you will see that after the introduction, he starts actually with Rashi aspects. But Rashi-based astrology is circumstantial. So there is a difference between individual astrology and circumstantial astrology. And that's where we have different dashas. We have Jaimini dashas, which is based on Rashi. And you can predict concrete events like you're going to get married, yes or no. You're going to have babies, yes or no. You're going to have a car accident, yes or no. This is all circumstantial. But through these planetary aspects, this is how you perceive the reality of these circumstances. And that is different. We have a Vimshottari Dasha very famously, but we also have different dashas, moon-based dashas, which works more on the psychology of the person, the inner world of the person, rather than the external circumstantial world. And therefore, now in this little course, we're going to focus a little bit on Jaimini Upadeśa Sūtras. I welcome you, and I hope you can get new insights and great joy in studying Vedic astrology. So in the first pada of the first chapter of Upadeśa Sūtras are given the core principles and the directions for utilizing the sutras. So as you may know, similar to the Vedanta Sutras, these are interwoven verses which have a lot of meaning in a condensed possible way. So these are very short verses, but they carry so much meaning, and you have to interweave these sutras. So when it comes to translating those sutras, many astrologers have different translation. Luckily, actually one of the most difficult sutras to translate are the Rashi aspects. And I want to stress again the importance of Rashi aspects and not directly diving into the planetary aspects. But these verses, all the astrologers in the whole Vedic astrology community seem to, how do you say, they seem to agree on the translation of which are the Rashi aspects. But we will see this in the next video. So following the core principles of the translations of these sutras is explicit necessary for the rest of the text, and it is a requirement. So any deviation is sure to land the astrologer amiss and in confusion. So it takes a little bit of work to translate the sutras, and if you know Sanskrit, I would highly recommend to kind of get a good copy of the Jaimini Sutras and see for yourself which translations are correct for you. So I'm using those especially of Ernst, because he has been doing such a great work. He's the founder of Kala Vedic Astrology Software, and yeah, his research is really spot on. So I'm using his translations, by the way. But it's also good to have kind of a little background of the Jaimini Sutra. So these Upadesha Sutras of Jaimini, they kind of present in a nutshell the development of astrological thought a few centuries already before the Christian era. And is written in a well-known laconic sutra style, and the treatise does not contain any elaborate description of topics, nor their detailed divisions and subdivisions, nor chains of arguments and counter arguments. It presumes the reader or the student to have possessed workable and sufficient knowledge of the common, easy astrological facts, and offers conclusive observations in the form of these aphorisms on the cardinal popular topics of astrology, such as disposition of planets, aspects, also owned houses, ascendants, zodiacal subdivisions, span of life, time of death, the kind of death, and especially circumstances and events in life, and so on. So the astrologers before Jaimini, following the suggestions of the Atharva Jyotisha, entered into kind of a detailed scrutiny of the color, strength, exaltation, domains, nature, the sex, the aspect, governing power, and the mutual relations of the different planets. The results of these observations are described in detail and are also systematically given in later books like the Varahamihira, the Kalyanavarma, and others, and especially also later in the 18th century, then Parāśara Horā Śāstra was recompiled. But it's clear from Jaimini's sutras that he was really conversant with the views of astrologers on several of these items, and accordingly in his treatise, he has given the specific influence of each planet on the several events and circumstances in the life of human beings. Now, I want to stress again these Rashi aspects because it looks that before these Middle Ages and before the Dark Ages, they were really in practice by the whole astrological communities. It's, in my opinion, these Dark Ages, these Kali Yuga influences and rewritten knowledge lost, etc., really hampered with the one science of Vedic astrology, and it started to divide and spread in different parts of the world. And so we have kind of different techniques in different parts. And we have to, as a modern astrologer, trying to find all of the pieces together. So the Upadeśa Sūtra of Jaimini consists of 4 adhyayas or books with 4 subdivisions or padas, of each adhyaya being like the Vedanta Sutra of Badarayana or Vyasadeva. Each adhyaya consists of about 200 short aphorisms. The first adhyaya discusses the general career of man, including his character, profession, monetary condition, his health, domestic happiness, and incidental happenings. So the second adhyaya is devoted to the various ways of ascertaining the span of life, short or long, the time of death during the span, and the kind of death. I'm not going to dive too much in that, but I'm going to focus mainly on the first adhyaya or the first book. The third and the fourth adhyaya appears like a supplementary adhyaya giving details of the topics discussed in the first 2 adhyayas. So the first 2 adhyayas are edited by various scholars with a brief commentary in Sanskrit or Hindi or English translations. So although manuscript material has been available, which is tolerable, satisfactory, no critical edition so far has been attempted by anybody. When this is written, I kind of have from Kala Vedic Astrology Software, Ernst has a pretty satisfactory and critical edition. And so noticing the different readings of these different translations, fixing the text at doubtful places, offering an introduction and defining the place of Jaimini among writers in Indian astrology is also kind of something that we have to go through. So anyway, what we have then is the first sutra. So we have the nature of the techniques, and over here, as many similar to the Vedanta Sutra and many other books, it starts with the invocation, and the first verse is Upadesha Vyakyashyamaha. And so we see Upadesha meaning instruction, teaching, initiation, formula, communication of the initiatory technique. Vyakyaha is explanation, exposition, paraphrasing, anything that can only be understood by explanation. Then we have Shamaha, I shall explain in detail, tell in full. So it kind of translates as I shall tell in full the exposition of the teaching formula initiatory technique. Now, there is a little bit of a hidden meaning here. So, this middle letter U, we start with U, Upadesha. U is the middle letter of the sacred word Om. The word of God or the sound vibration of God. Pade meaning feet, and Sa indicates the general welfare of all. So you could say that Upadesha therefore hides within in the meaning at the feet of God for the welfare of all. And that's why we're going to do this little course here on YouTube. Now, the first meaning of the sutra, I shall tell in full the teaching, indicate that the teaching given in these sutras is complete, that there are no loose ends, and that everything necessary to understand the sutras is being given in the text. So